Width and height are two things that we should have talked about a long time ago, but we didn't. I guess it's not really that big of a deal. However, I do want to stress that adding a width and height is extremely important in CSS. That's because when you're styling your web page, you don't want everything just to sit in its very natural form. If you do that, then everything's going to be in their natural block element and nothing's going to actually look right, and there really isn't any point to styling that then. So what the width and height does, adds a width that you specify and a height that you specify. Now there's two ways to do this with both a width and height. We can use either a percent, so a 50% width is 50% of your browser. I do want to let you know that if you take your browser and you minimize it a little bit, and then you take one of the edges and you squish it inwards or outwards, it's always going to stay that 50%. Now if we want a very precise width, we should use an exact measurement, for example 400 pixels. And no matter how many times you change the width of your browser, this will always be 400 pixels. The exact same rule applies with height. So first, let's go over width. Adding a width is super easy. We use the width property, and the value is either a percent or a pixel. Again, I just want to let you know that I do pretty much everything in pixels. That's just my preference. If you want to do things in EMs or centimeters, by all means, go for it. I'm not going to tell you that it's wrong, because it's not. With our width property, we have three answers: auto, percent, and width. Auto, which is default, the browser will automatically adjust the width to what it thinks is best. Most browsers will agree with each other on what the width should be. Percent is the percent that you'd use. For example, if you wanted an element to only take up 25% of your page instead of the natural 100% if it was a block element, then you'd specify 25%. And width is the pixel, centimeter, etc. for the exact width. Example, again, 200 pixels, or like we talked about earlier, 400 pixels. Now let's look at three examples of width. So in our style.css page, we have four classes: auto, half, pixel, and border. So with auto, we have width is equal to auto, half, width is equal to 50%, which is half, and then we have pixel, and we just wrote 200 pixels for that. And border really isn't that important. I just wanted to show you exactly how this is going to work, and this will allow you to visually see the difference. So with our first one, with the first div, we had auto, and this is an auto width. And it's because a div is a block element, takes up as much room as it can, so the width is also going to try to take up as much room as it can. Next, with our half class, this is 50% of our screen. As you see, 50% to the left is taken up, 50% to the right is free, and a 200 pixel width, which will have exactly 200 pixels wide. Then we have height. Now height is the exact same thing as width, except obviously it uses the height property instead of the width property, but it also accepts auto, percent, and length. So auto is default, and this is the way the browser thinks it should be. Percent is the percent of its parent element, again the same thing as width, and length is the exact height using pixel, centimeters, whatever measurement that you feel most comfortable with, and as an example, 100 pixels. Now the way we apply our height property is the same as applying the width property from above. So if we take a look at that again, instead of width, we would type height. And that's what it would look like. So it's the exact same as width. It's the exact same when it comes to writing code. And you should also know that some browsers like to act up. You might not actually take up 50%. Although this issue is mostly fixed, it does still exist. So to work around this, we usually stick with pixel measurements. Again, doesn't have to be a pixel, and uses absolute widths and heights. So to get around the 50% thing, we would use, for example, 600 pixels. This is tricky because a lot of people use a different resolution. For example, I use roughly 1300 by 800. I know a couple of people who have really large monitors, and they're using 3000 by 2000-ish. Now, if you specify 600 pixels in your browser, it's going to show up really small for them. For you, it might show up regular. With JavaScript, we can actually fix this, and we can get the height of the person's browser and adjust everything from there. We're not quite at that point, For now, we're just going to stick with the basic height and width.